The film begins with Jess, a mother with tears in her eyes, hugging her frightened son Tommy and telling him it was only a nightmare. Jess prepares for a boat trip with her autistic son and some friends, planning to meet at Triangle Harbor that day. She runs through the house almost frantically, even taking a toy boat out of the pool. While Tommy paints, he spills paint on the floor and Jess quickly cleans it, but her dress gets stained. Suddenly the doorbell rings, though when she opens there is no one there. She changes clothes, gets ready, and before leaving, tries to calm her son by assuring him the floor is clean. Finally, Jess and Tommy head to the harbor. On the yacht Triangle, Greg, Jess's friend, waits for the others. Soon Sally and her husband Downey arrive, who also introduce Heather. Jess appears with Victor, but Tommy is not with them. Victor comments that he notices Jess acting strange. She hugs Greg and apologizes, explaining that she is just tired, although she insists on making the trip. Once on board, Jess meets the rest and they prepare to set sail. While they sail, Jess falls asleep in the cabin and dreams of the beach, but wakes up startled without remembering what she dreamed. Greg asks why she did not bring Tommy, and Victor explains that when he asked her, she took a while to answer and said he was at school, even though it is Saturday and there should not be classes. When Jess goes up on deck, Greg asks again about Tommy. She only replies that he is fine and that every day is the same. Later, the wind suddenly stops and the boat is left motionless. They see a huge dark cloud approaching and Greg sends a distress call, but the Coast Guard responds that they detect nothing abnormal. Suddenly, the radio distorts and picks up the voice of a terrified woman asking for help. She says someone is killing everyone, before the communication cuts off. At that moment, the storm reaches them. Greg orders them to put on life jackets. He and Victor try to control the boat while the others take shelter in the cabin. Heather is dragged by a wave and disappears into the sea while the yacht capsizes. The rest manage to climb onto the overturned hull with no sign of Heather. Some time later, they spot a huge ocean liner, the Aeolus. They shout for help, although Jess watches it suspiciously. They see the silhouette of someone on the bridge, and as the ship approaches, they climb aboard. However, they discover it is deserted. Greg suggests going to the bridge to look for the captain. Jess comments that she feels she recognizes the corridors, but Greg replies that they all look the same. Soon, they find a framed photo from 1932 of the same ship. They discover that Aeolus is the Greek god of the wind and father of Sisyphus, condemned by the gods to eternally push a rock uphill, only to see it fall again and again. The conversation is interrupted when they hear metallic noises. Following them, they find some keys that Jess recognizes as hers. They even have her son's photo, identical to the one on her locket. No one understands how they got there. Sally suggests that maybe Heather survived and boarded the ship, carrying the keys. Upon reaching the ballroom, everything seems prepared for a party, with tables full of food, but there is no one there. Jess thinks she briefly sees someone running and tells the group. Victor chases the mysterious figure through the corridors, while Greg and Jess follow him. Jess insists that she feels déjà vu in every corner, but Greg thinks she is in shock. They hear water running and enter a room. In a mirror, there is a message written in blood ordering them to go to the theater. Jess is frightened, but Greg assumes the crew is playing a prank on them. They argue and she leaves, returning alone to the salon, where Sally and Downey are no longer there and the food is now rotten. Meanwhile, Sally and Downey find a trail of blood that leads them to the theater. Jess, hidden, sees Victor staggering covered in blood. As she approaches, he attacks her, trying to strangle her. She struggles desperately and manages to wound him in the head. At that instant, a shotgun blast startles her. She runs to the theater, where Sally and Downey cry beside Greg's body, just murdered. Sally accuses Jess of having killed him, since Greg said so before dying. Jess insists she was with Victor, but no one believes her. Suddenly, a shooter on the balcony fires, wounding Sally and Downey. Jess flees, hiding in the kitchen with a knife, while the attacker, wearing a mask, searches for her without finding her. Jess reaches the lifeboat station, trying to escape, but the attacker finds her. Hesitating for a moment to shoot, Jess deflects the weapon and manages to flee, falling to a lower level. The masked figure chases her across the deck. She grabs an axe and manages to defend herself until she finally defeats him. Removing the mask, she discovers it is a woman who tells her that the only way to return home is to kill everyone. Jess strikes her with the axe and watches her fall into the sea. Agitated, she hears music coming from a cabin with an old record player. When she changes the record, she hears voices on deck. She sees Greg, Victor, Sally, Downey, and herself on the capsized boat asking for help. Horrified, she realizes that the events are repeating. She decides to hide and watches her other self board the ocean liner with the group, repeating exactly the same conversations. As she crouches, her keys fall. She understands that she was the one who left them there before. Later, she hears the others calling Heather, but realizes that in fact they had been chasing her all along. In the mirror, her new version briefly sees her, and Victor runs after her. Jess flees to the deck and sees Downey's body being devoured by seagulls. Victor catches up with her, surprised that she arrived so quickly. She tries to explain that there are copies of everyone on the ship, that the bodies repeat, and that she saw him himself with a head wound. Victor does not believe her. In the middle of the argument, Jess accidentally pushes him against a hook that pierces his skull. Desperate, she flees and enters the crew's locker room, where she finds crumpled papers with the same phrase written over and over again: "If they board, kill them all." She recognizes her own handwriting. She also discovers rows of coveralls identical to those of the shooter and stored shotguns, while the voice that told her she had to kill to return home echoes in her mind. Looking at the floor, she sees that her locket has fallen through a grate right on top of an enormous pile of identical lockets. She realizes that everything repeats in an endless cycle. Gathering her courage, she loads ammunition and goes out in search of the group. She crosses paths again with the injured Victor, points the gun at him, but promises she will fix everything and save them. Then she sees her double entering the ballroom, and instead of killing her, lets Victor see her duplicated, hoping he will believe her. However, before she can explain, she hears a shot. Once again, someone is murdering Sally and Downey in the theater. Jess pulls them aside in time and manages to make them dodge the bullet, trying to convince them that they have already lived this before and perhaps can change destiny. They do not understand her, but follow her for a while. Jess leaves them with a shotgun to go for Victor, but only finds a trail of blood that leads to the water, as if he had fallen overboard. In a corridor, Downey shoots at the masked attacker, who turns out to be another version of Jess, with her face smeared with blood. This other Jess assures that Victor fell into the sea and convinces them to follow her. The original Jess tries to warn them from afar, but her friends leave with the imposter, who soon brutally stabs them. Sally manages to escape and runs in terror, believing that the murderer is the original Jess. Sally sends a desperate distress call over the radio. Jess hears the transmission and understands that it was the same one they heard on the yacht before the storm. She searches for her through the ship and finds her on the deck, surrounded by dozens of accumulated bodies of Sally. She dies in Jess's arms, confirming that everything repeats countless times. At that moment, Jess sees the new Jess confront the masked killer and throw her overboard, restarting the cycle. Understanding the mechanics of the loop, Jess tries to intervene. She goes down to the engine room and writes the message on the mirror with blood, arranges the bodies and takes the mask and the shotgun to assume the role of the shooter, hoping to break the cycle. With her face covered, she follows the steps of her other version and finally kills Greg, Sally, and Downey, just as had happened before. The cycle restarts. The new Jess flees from the masked Jess, and both end up confronting each other on the deck. In the fight, the masked Jess, the original, is thrown into the sea, not before warning her double that if she wants to return home, she must prevent everyone from boarding and kill them. After falling into the sea, Jess reaches the shore, just as she had dreamed while on the yacht. After regaining some calm and orienting herself, she looks for a way to return home. Upon arriving, she feels relieved, but when she looks through the window, she sees her son drawing. Suddenly, she hears her own voice and sees another Jess picking up clothes and a toy boat from the yard. Looking again, she sees herself scolding Tommy for leaving the toy. Tommy, distracted, spills paint on the floor. The Jess at home cries as she sees herself shouting at him and slapping him, reflecting her frustration over the boy's autism. While cleaning, the original Jess rings the doorbell to distract the other. Taking advantage of the confusion, she grabs a hammer and strikes the new Jess on the head. She gets Tommy's attention, assuring him that what he saw was only a nightmare. Then she places the body inside a bag, retrieves the lost locket, and puts it in the trunk of the car along with the bag. After finishing, Jess and Tommy leave again, and she promises him she will never hurt him again. However, a seagull crashes against the windshield, and Jess stops the car to bury it. As she approaches the edge of the water to throw the bird into the sea, she realizes there is a pile of dead seagulls in the same place. She understands that she is still trapped in the loop. Hurriedly, she returns to the car and starts it, trying to calm Tommy, but a truck coming from the opposite direction crashes into them, overturning the vehicle. People come to help and find Tommy badly injured and Jess's body, which had been hidden in the trunk, while the original Jess watches the scene unharmed. A taxi driver approaches and tells her there is no way to save the boy. With these words, Jess understands the reality. She must act to break the cycle. Finally, she asks to be taken to Triangle Harbor and falls asleep. Upon waking, she finds herself again at the harbor, with confused memory. She runs into Victor but does not remember him. He introduces himself and takes her to the yacht. When he asks about Tommy, Jess takes a while to answer and says he is at school. Upon arriving, Greg is waiting for her. Jess hugs him and apologizes. She decides to join the rest on Greg's boat, starting the cycle again, with the hope that this time she will manage to save her son.